Hello, I am here, and I have not shared the link yet for this chatting session because I am sending it only to my channel. So if you want to come chat, you're watching on Jacob's channel, you have to come to my channel first. And then if you're watching on Jacob's channel, you have to come to my channel first. I'm just gonna shut that off. And I'm doing so now. And while I wait for people to come, I guess I'll put my channel link in the I'm somewhat inept at doing things on a computer in a live fashion, but nevertheless, the link to my channel is in the chat. And while we wait, I figured maybe we could go through some time of meditation, which I will assist with. Oh. Yeah, let's have some meditation time. So I'm gonna add something to help with that.
Just gonna go into my little blank matrix room. We're just in this existential sensory deprivation tank. I'm gonna meditate while I'm driving down the freeway. Daddy, Daddy, the house is on fire. No, not for me. Daddy, Daddy, the house is on fire. Psychedelics. What is the house? All is one. Well, what do you see in front of you? I see a green frog. Do you see arms? And a whole well of things just came up inside of you because you were raised with this little fellow. Did you see his little eyes? Well, what do you see in front of you? I see a green frog. Do you see arms? And a whole well of things just came up inside of you because you were raised with this little fellow. Did you see his little eyes? Now we're apes.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that one. It's got a lot of views. There's a lot of oh, get that out of there. Let's see. Quintessential asked favorite speakers, authors, preachers, and saints. Well, C.S. Lewis obviously he's mentioned by everyone, and Francis Schaeffer is one that has been a little more instrumental to getting me out here on YouTube. He really did a good job predicting a lot of things. He really had he foresaw the coming of the meaning crisis, I guess you could say. Mostly he looked at it through the lens of existential philosophers, but it's kind of the same thing now, just in the postmodern terms. Another interesting person is Watchman Nee. he's a 20th century martyr, and interesting because he was a Chinese Christian, and I'm just kind of intrigued by the way that Christianity kind of finds new ways of expressing itself in different cultures, and there's not a whole lot of, we think of it so much as a Western thing, but you can't get much more Eastern than China, and there's actually been Christians in China since like at least the 600s or something, but he wrote some pretty good books. The Normal Christian Life was a really good book. And he definitely has some different spins on things because, perhaps we say a lot of Western Christianity was taking wisdom that was present in things like Plato and Aristotle and integrating it into the Bible. Watchman Nee was doing the same thing with Confucianism. And we have a guest.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I've got a real bad Wi-Fi connection. I don't know if it's just because we don't pay for enough bandwidth or if it's something else, but
Yeah.
I'm not coming through very well.
Well, we can hear you okay. So, and I know you are a real person because you've been on some of the other streams. So, Father Eric was telling me to beware the trolls because he had some incidents on his stream, but
Interesting.
yeah. Well, you want to be charitable to people, but if without a face, you never know what might come up on that screen. So if somebody
Sure.
dumps
Yeah.
some,
Goodness. Yeah. I guess I can.
yeah. So somebody said hi and then took the opportunity to flash some
indecency.
Yes.
Nice.
So somebody's asking. This is so. R. Shane Jenkins is your name. Somebody's asking that here. Okay. Because it's not showing it, but yeah. Oh, there it goes. So, who is R. Shane Jenkins, and how did you come to be here?
Well, I don't know how much detail you want. I've done one Randos meeting with Paul. I have no idea which came first as far as the kind of pillars of my intellectual stimulation. It probably started with Jordan Peterson through some clickbaity political thing or something like that. But it didn't take me long to be wrapped into the deep conversation about meaningful matters, and then really very much appreciate Vervaeke's just very diligent and thorough unpacking of the meaning crisis, all the language that he's brought to it. I don't use all of the Vervaeke words well, but I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of the concepts.
Yeah.
And Paul was just a hub for me for all kinds of well, initially he was actually my anchor because I was a little bit intimidated by the truth that was being spoken and its potential conflict with my faith. And so since I could tell right away that Paul was faithful, I could listen to it through him with a sense of safety. I mean, as cowardly as that sounds, I needed that initially. And now I have sort of my own durability where I can even introduce Paul to things that he may not have heard of yet.
So what were the things that were challenging to you at first, or?
Well, on some level, I must have intuitively known that my attention was my worship. And so even spending 50 hours with John Vervaeke could have been spent reading my Bible, just engaging in conversation with anyone from my friend group that might need it. And so I just needed, whatever. I mean, whether I needed it or not, I was comforted by somebody else who was also strong in their faith, committing the time and justifying it as worthy.
Okay. Yeah, I think I hear you there. I mean, I know that it's always a balance with those things. And there's always a possibility of turning good things into ultimate things, um, but yeah, they're not. It's not. Yeah, it's not a waste of time. And it's balance is a funny word because I don't think anybody's actually ever. Balance is always just a pendulum swinging between two extremes. So sometimes,
Well, and I have plenty of experience myself where the idea of balance, like you don't balance sin and righteousness, like that's just silly.
yeah.
Um, and I remember having another one of my paradigms, kind of like that, the term balance and how we misuse it all the time, challenged by whoever it is that did that Job series with Jess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, the lady,
Sherry, right?
she said something like very um, sort of standoffish with regard to the term boundaries, and I was like, oh, I've only ever heard that used in a sort of affectionate way, that boundaries were good for the preservation of the spiritual integrity and the safety of the person establishing the quote unquote healthy boundary. But the way she laid it out there, I was just like, no, you're 100% right. We use that term as incorrectly as we use the term balance. Like, um, and it's, I could go off a little bit, I guess, and try to explain what I felt like she was saying, but um,
Mm-hmm.
we need here I am speaking for the universe. It seems beneficial to value what needs to be valued in the right time. Like, uh, it's perfectly appropriate to focus exclusively on my wife for days on end in the right circumstance, or one of my children. And you can imagine a medical emergency, or even just a relational crisis, or maybe even just a relational opportunity. And sorry about all the background noise. Um, anyway, the same is true with the idea of a boundary. I think the term membrane might be better.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's kind of like yeah, I mean, yeah, like a membrane or something. That's kind of like how every living things are always made up of cells. If the cells don't have that boundary, then they don't function effectively. But if that membrane's not permeable to some things getting in and out, it also will cease to work properly. So
I
um,
can't remember who was talking about it most recently, but it was something in the really abstract philosophical realm, like you might hear Vervaeke talking about, where you try to capture a concept with a word, like um, like carrot or something like that. It doesn't really matter. But
mhm.
on some level, the word isn't sufficient, right? The moreness and the suchness, right? And so if you don't try to describe it with words, with categories, then it doesn't really exist. At the same time, no thing can exist without all the other things. It is defined by its exterior and its past and its future as much as it's designed by its current state that can be described and perceived and interacted with. And so the boundary thing, like the idea that you and I are separate, is true and important, and we can't really exist functionally without understanding the concept of our individuation.
Mm.
Our individuation is kind of worthless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we definitely need both that thing that the similarity that we can share and relate to and the differences. Like, because otherwise, if people like, just in regards to people and relationships and things, if we were totally alien and there was no point of commonality between us whatsoever, which really you can't even saying like you can't say that even and conceptualize that about another person. It would have to be a person and something totally unlike a person. But I guess Shane dropped off. But anyway, um, that wouldn't work because you could never communicate anything. And if you were the same as another person entirely, that would also not work because you would not be able to have any interesting growth or anything like that. So, let's see. Let's see. Aaron's watching. Feel free to come on if you want. We have not had much real conversation, I don't think. So that would be fun. Slackarius is a troll, but he's harmless. And Antonio vouches for him. That's good. Is human-powered sustained flight theoretically possible? I don't know. Depends on what you mean by human-powered. If it's human-powered through the use of machines and devices, then probably. Cameron Bertuzzi capturing Christianity is converting to Catholicism. LOL. Well, I never really watched that channel, but yeah. Would you like to talk more about your education idea that Jacob mentioned the other day? Yes, I will talk about that. I am working right now on a real written proposal to kind of explain this, but well, I'll just give the long spiel until somebody else wants to come on. So my educational choices that I took were a little unconventional. I was homeschooled from like 6th grade on, and I did not plan to go to college per se. It wasn't necessarily. I didn't feel like it was a wise thing to do without a specific goal in mind. And then I had a friend who went to a program. It was a discipleship training program. So he went away to this big mega church in the Midwest, and to kind of learn about working in church. What's up, Fluffy Ribbit? I'm doing good. Yes, my kids are asleep. So he went away to this program, and when he came back, like it was had such a dramatic impact on him. Like he was such a changed person that I was really impressed. And so I thought, well, maybe I should try something like that. So I ended up going to this program for a couple of years and kind of learned some of the ins and outs of like how a church works and how the ministries function and the roles that people have and things like that. And their kind of way that they pitched it was that if you were to go for 3 years, which is kind of their maximum, if you went for a 4th year, you were like technically on staff. So maybe you could say that was like the full thing. Then technically you would be like you'd have the credits to become a licensed minister in that particular denomination, and you could go be a pastor or a youth pastor or something like that. So that was like the one kind of clear life path you could have out of a thing like that. Of course, it wasn't necessarily supposed to be only for that thing, because a lot of people would go for like 1 year as kind of a gap year thing, as to say, take a year to focus on your relationship with God, and um, and that would just be to your benefit, and you'll be more spiritually mature before you go to college, etc., etc. And that's fine. That's a good, noble thing as well. Um, but the functional problem with this is that many people went to this program, and essentially, as far as starting their life went, it just kind of sets them back, because they didn't gain any college credit for their time being there. So if they wanted to go to college, it was another year before they would graduate. And if they wanted to try to become a minister or something like that, it didn't really give them enough of the total training that they needed to succeed in that. So there was a lot of people that went through this program, got jobs as like youth pastors, different places, and didn't really flourish in that position. But there was some good things about it. One thing was it kind of had this pattern of leadership where the second year students were supposed to kind of help the first year students learn, and the third year students would help the second year students learn. So there was leadership qualities that were being passed on. So that was somewhat good. Now, some of them do, yes, to the point you're seeing some of the problem here. So some of these programs did also give people an opportunity to do college courses, like they would team up with a college, and so you would have some credit. So that was a good thing. Later on, I went to Bible college. I did not complete my degree there, but I went for a shorter program, and that was good too. But what I realized was that in the Bible college, people would learn a lot about how to study the Bible, maybe how to preach, how to craft a good sermon. They did not learn a lot about how to deal with people, how to pour into people, how to invest, and kind of the important relationships. Now, simultaneous to this, in my growing up experience, my father was the pastor of a small church, and he was a bivocational minister. So he was a public school teacher. Actually, he taught private schools for a long time. Eventually, went to a public school. It was like the first time he ever actually made any decent money. But he would work a full job, and then his weekends would be, really nights, evenings, and Sundays. He would be a pastor. And what I saw in that was, though he didn't spend a lot of time trying to grow the church, he was helping the flock of people that he had, and that meant a lot of different things. Meant a lot of just time on the phone, helping people with their problems, having people come over, and then like a lot of mundane stuff too. As the pastor's kid, there was a lot of times when I would have to be volunteered for shoveling snow or mowing grass, or helping people move, helping people clean out their garages, all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of older people and stuff like that. And so, what I saw is that here was three kind of different paths that led to the functioning reality of like how a church works, or really, if you want to be a productive member of the kingdom of God. One, you have to learn about people, how to lead people, how to train them, and really how to reproduce yourself. How do you get somebody to to become as you are. Then there is, obviously the training. The link's on my channel if you want to join. So I put the link to my channel at the top of this chat on Jacob's channel, and the link's in my chat. So there's obviously the Bible aspect of it is very important, but then also just kind of this mundane stuff, and so fast forward to that. I've spent a lot of my time working at churches, but lately been doing carpentry for several years now, and I find that so much of the Bible is full of metaphors for understanding our relationship to God, and it's rooted in things like the work that we do, or things like agriculture and planting seeds and growing crops, building things. Like there's a lot of, for a religious book, there's a lot of building metaphors in the Bible. The ark, the tabernacle, the temple. There's a lot of building projects going on, so that's important stuff. So, what's up, Roman?
What's up?
How are you?
I'm trying to learn how to paint and gouache, and I saw your channel, and you want to talk to people, and I figure that's what this is about, right?
Yes. Yeah. So somebody was asking me my plan that I was just explaining a little bit. So, so basically, I was kind of giving some backstory, but my point is, the Bible's so full of all these metaphors to help us understand how the nature of God and our purpose and all these things. And I was saying a lot of them are things like building, growing, farming, and then a lot of relational metaphors. God is a father, things between husbands and wives, and all these different things. And so my kind of realization all of a sudden is that we have
you would embody the parable. Is this the idea?
Essentially, it's a yes, Aaron. You can
you
come
build a house on sand and see how it goes.
Well, my thought is like now we have so much like abstract concepts that we discuss this stuff. We think about it all abstractly, but a lot of people don't have what people are missing now is the mundane half of the metaphor. They don't have the experience of working hard, of trying to grow food, of trying to struggle in relationships and all these things. And so that's part of what we have to recapture to help make more sense of the Bible as a whole. And then I think once you understand, once we kind of like reconnect those parts, then you can take those metaphors and transfer them to the newer ways that people are experiencing life, like in the online world. But you have to understand like both sides of it first. So,
okay. So yeah, I get that there's like a different audience, and whenever a lot of times when people start talking about what's the word, theodicy, we're like, oh hey, why is there so much evil in the world, right? And I'm like, well, if you ever have tried to design a system, right, either like on a computer, like I have, or even like people try to make a better economic system, right? Like if the people who made the economy were so good, why is there so much evil? And it's like, well, it's really hard, dude. And this is a simple answer. That's something I think about. But there's all sorts of metaphors in the Bible that like have this sort of thing, right? Hey, if he made the pots, right, and like he gets to decide how they go, right? He can make one to good and one to evil. That's his deal, right?
Yeah.
And like, but some of them make God sound a little lousy, like the parable of the sower, right? Oh, hey, God's just throwing seeds out there, and some of them land in good place, and some of them land in bad. And if you didn't land in a good place, tough luck. And is there a deeper meaning behind this? Because it does sound like God's kind of lame, right?
Well, let me see. I don't know if the sower necessarily represents God in the parable. I'm going to look it up so I can. Let's see. Because I think he probably says the kingdom of God or something, right?
Yeah. What do you think the kingdom of God is? Because there are things about the kingdom of God that don't sound so good, right? Like he talks about, in the kingdom of God, right? To those with much will be given, and to those with little, all will be taken away. And like, well, that sounds a lot like Earth, right? That's kind of sad sometimes. But like, what's the kingdom of heaven if it's like this Earth where, these bad things sometimes happen?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Some of that stuff is just like the reality of things. I mean, because if God just made like we all know, they say like, well, why didn't God make a world without sin or whatever? Like, these sort of questions. It's like, okay, well, in some sense, God probably imagined that, and it was incredibly boring, and it didn't really accomplish anything. Because like.
Yeah, like I get it, right? If you had to design a system where people could make buildings and weapons and all the things we can make, right? And there has to be a complex world, and that complex world allows for evil. It has to, right? Because of other concerns.
And I think about it. And I mean, I think that like the proper like arc of the biblical story, it's like creation, fall, redemption. And it's in that path, like, which is like the fall has to be in there in some ways. It's like God creates, like, because there's like a destructive element to creation in a sense. You can't, you have whatever you have, the matter. It's just an unshaped substance. To turn it into something, you have to destruct, to remove the parts that you don't want, or some of those parts can be removed, and then they can be reintegrated in a new way, but it's still in the process. It's still a destructive process. So
it's
hey. So I mean, so I was saying in the parable of the sower, I mean, I think that's just, I think it's more or less we're supposed to be sowers, and what are we responsible for? We're responsible for sowing the seed, and where it lands and how it received is not up to us, But because if we don't sow the seed, it doesn't do anything if it stays in the bag, So sow it, and then it's an act of faith in a sense to allow God to take care of it, because God's the one who makes it grow, not the sower.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're thinking this. So one of the more easy ways to think about it is that the seed is like evangelism or whatever, right? And then how this prospers is depends on circumstance, and if the circumstances are bad, you have to make your peace about that, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, you could say it's not even necessarily like the gospel per se, but even just like truth, if you're sowing truth, it's not going to go well with people who are happy in their delusions,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that goes for anything good you do, right? Like even if you try to like give money to a poor person, sometimes that really helps them and changes their life in the way that you hoped it would. And sometimes it doesn't. And you have to make your peace about that. It shouldn't stop you from being good to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually very informative. Thank you.
Glad it could be helpful.
Do you guys have the opportunity to pull that scripture up? Because it's one of the few that Jesus like pretty immediately interprets for his disciples. Like he kind of asks them, "Do you understand what I was saying?" And then he lays it out. He tells them what each of the soils represented.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the fact that he did that helps me anyway to have confidence that like not to try to read too much into it, but also not to walk away without really embracing what the main drive was.
Yeah. So, let's see. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it. Let's see. He told people. Okay. A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still others' seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. Okay, and then he says why he speaks in parables, and then here's what it means. Okay, here's what the parable means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. Okay, so the seed would be the message itself, the message about the kingdom. So it doesn't really matter it could. So I guess the farmer would be anybody who's sharing the message. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but worries of his life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what is sown. Yeah. So,
So, but what is the kingdom? The kingdom. So it's the message of the kingdom. Okay. The kingdom is.
Well, the message of the kingdom is the thing that causes growth, 60 and 100 fold. I mean, that is the thing, I guess that God's creating, which is going to kind of come about regardless of if we want it to or not. But it's up to us how much we want to participate and facilitate that happening. So,
do you think it would be fair to somehow, the term "the body of Christ" is often something that is used to describe a member of the church, right? And hold on.
Oh, Aaron's here. What's up, Aaron?
Hey.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I just saw the stream and I wanted to join in.
Yeah, glad you could be here. My throat is not feeling so great, so I don't know if I'll be able to stay on for much longer, but I'm glad to talk for a while I can.
So are we asking like questions about the Bible?
I just whatever, I was just trying to just.
Well, he was talking about his plan for a school, and it was going to be based on biblical principles. And part of it was that people were going to build things, right? It was going to be like a trade school. And somehow they were going to learn about the Bible, or they were going to learn about being a good Christian or whatever through like building things. I thought it was a really cool idea.
Yeah. So let me get back to that a little bit. I was thinking about this mostly because, you have, it's like we're at like a 40-60 split for like men and women getting bachelor's degrees now. Like 60% of women, like only 40% men. Yeah. So there's a lot of guys that are not they're not going to college, and but I don't necessarily know if they see a lot of clear paths to like a successful career. I think that so one thing, learning how to like build work in the trades or something like that, that's just a good thing to know. It's something you can rely on, you can fall back on. It's not necessarily something you have to commit your whole life to doing that, but it's the sort of thing where you could get your foot in the door with like the company I work at. I know like right now, like I'm out in the field, but there's like so many people that are now like higher up in the administration that started like on the ground level. So like, there's a lot of like area, you can, if you want to just be making a lot of money, and you can do that by going up the ranks in some of these companies and stuff like that. But beyond that, it's like, you need to learn how to like do stuff that's physical and like work hard. And I think that there's a really good lessons you can learn from the kind of like hands-on learning from another person, like instead of just like classroom time, like seeing somebody show you how to do something with their hands, like it's kind of like it's like Mr. Miyagi, like in the Karate Kid. It's like the kind of thing is like he was teaching him to do all this like wax on, wax off stuff, and he didn't realize that he was like absorbing the wisdom like without knowing it. So
dude, I remember someone who was doing something like this. There were like these monks, right? What they did to like make a living was that they trained dogs. And like this guy went to live with the monk. I think he was like with some like magazine or something. And he just wanted to hang out with them. And they would do stuff like, they were training like the helper dogs, you know what I mean? Like if you're like blind or whatever, you need like a really well-trained dog to like guide you around. And they would like give little lessons they would like have a dog, and the dog would like had to go from one end of the room to the other, like guide them around. And that he would like be around trying to like, like tease them and get them distracted or whatever, because dogs are really easy to be distracted, right? And this was sort of part of how they would try to teach them basic things like, it's really important to pay attention, right? It's really important to always stay focused on the thing and not get distracted by things of the world, right? And it's there is a way to do. There are people who try to do things like this. It seems like people should do more of that.
Yeah.
But did you have particular ideas about how to do that kind of thing?
I mean, that's kind of like what I'm trying to do with my thing. I mean, some of this is because like me realizing like, oh, like so much of this stuff, like, so I'm listening to like, a lot of the stuff that we listen to around these channels, and just a lot of Bible stuff and whatever. Yeah. And like, while I'm listening to this, I'm doing work, like real work. And I can see very clearly like that the like principles of like how this spiritual stuff works. It applies directly to what I'm doing with my hands, and it applies directly to like the relationships that I have with my coworkers and the things I do in my family and all this stuff. And I think that like this is kind of like, big shocker, a really Protestant thing, but part of the thing that I think is like you could say like in a sense like if the conservative the conservative like political movement, like the non-spiritual part of it just wants to be like have a family, work hard, like values and stuff like that. And it's like trying to say it's like just because those things are just inherently good or whatever. And I don't necessarily think like they are good, but they're not just because of like tradition or because it's like it worked in the past. Like these things are spiritual things. And I think that, part of the thing is that we kind of have this idea of like, we think being spiritual means like what you do in church or saying certain prayers or, how much time you spend, reading the Bible or whatever, those kind of things, those are all spiritual things. But the point of it is that you're supposed to like take that and then apply that to like every part of your life. You know, I think that's kind of like when it talks about like praying without ceasing. Now, like there's like these monks or whatever that they're just trying to constantly have they're just saying the Jesus prayer over and over and over again all day long. It's like, okay, sure, that's a thing you're doing it. That's impressive. Do you think that was like that's the thing that God wants all of humanity to be doing? And that's like the highest goal of humanity is for you to be incapable of having a conversation with somebody because you're constantly saying the same like 8-word prayer over and over again.
Right.
Or is it more about like integrating the aspect of prayer, which is, you could say, being in communication with God, making that a constant part of every part of your day, so that you are conversing with God in the way that you go about your daily life, you know, the way that you do your morning routine, the way that you take care of your house, the way that you do your job and you treat your family and your friends and all these things. And so, like, I think that getting married, having a family, working hard at your job, those are deeply spiritual things, like in and of themselves.
Yeah.
And because we kind of like are disconnected, that we don't think about it that way. And so I think people are missing out a little bit because like they're thinking like, I'm not connected to God because I'm not having like I'm not going to mass enough, or I'm not having like a spiritual enough experience or whatever. Like, so.
Well, do you think people say that just kind of like how you talked about the conservative, secular version of that, just because they want like the end result of someone who labels himself as conservative to have a family, you know, be successful, rather than the spiritual thing, which it feels like, you know, being a Christian, or I guess religious, is it's a lifelong practice. Like you never really, it's, I guess, kind of like the Orthodox theosis thing, where you don't like achieve theosis as like you've earned it, but it's just something your lifelong goal is to live like Christ. And so maybe that's something interesting. And I guess to ask a question then, how do you think we can be more, lack of a better word, spiritual? Because when I go to my Bible study, sometimes it feels like when we go through like it asks us like we're reading a book and it asks us like little questions, and a lot of the answers we give are like, we should be humble, we should be sacrificial, but it doesn't feel like a spiritual, this is like, you are blessed by God if you do this, but more of like, you need to achieve this thing, or you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like it doesn't feel very spiritual. It feels very cut and dry. Do this, don't do that, rather than like, you can connect to God by being this way. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, it's kind of like, there's those kind of stock answers to these things or whatever, but it is very much kind of like now we're in church or we're in Bible study, so we're going to follow the rules of Bible study, and we're going to talk about the Bible study topics and use those answers to answer the questions, and it's disconnected from the rest of our life. Well, I mean, I just think about this a lot of times because it's like, because, you know, so many times I've heard people say things like, oh, I really need to like get like my relationship with God's not so great, like I'm not doing so well, I just need like more time to focus on my relationship with God. And they're always needing more time, and they're never finding the time or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, well, like,
where's God?
I actually, you know, kind of
where are you going to find God?
Well, that's the thing.
Is
It's
it-
like, maybe, we have these crazy way where we're living life now where like
Mhm.
everything has become separate that used to be together. Because,
Mhm.
if you think about it, 150, 200 years ago or whatever, or if you're like the Amish, how are you living? You are working outdoors physically with other people in community, communicating with each other
Mhm.
physically,
Mhm.
producing your own food, making your own clothes. All the things that you are doing are like mundane, normal things. And yet they don't have a meaning crisis because they're all simultaneously, through doing all of this mundane work, getting all of their like spiritual and emotional and physical needs taken care of.
Well,
Um,
I mean, the spiritual
so
thing you're trying to do, right, is love, right? And so, like,
yeah,
when you're growing crops, you're making food for yourself, who you love, hopefully, and for your family, who you love, hopefully, and your community, who you love, hopefully, and you're making clothes for people you love, right? And this is all an expression of love all the time, right? And if we did think there's more practical, right, maybe that would be enough. They would see the connection and they'd be like, oh, this is how I love God. This is how I love my community, by doing these very practical things.
yeah. And I mean, some of the stuff's like, like, I mean, I know like my wife will get frustrated because she'll be like, I just want to get up and like read my Bible in the morning, and our kids are like screaming and stuff and like not
Mhm.
even doing it. And she'll be like, like these children are keeping me from being more spiritual. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe a little bit. Like they do need to learn how to be like a little bit more well behaved, but also it's like that's an opportunity to learn, like, to be patient with somebody
Yeah.
and to say like, I can't make a quiet space to get to hear from God, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to hear from God in this noisy space, like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
because God's not God can overcome that, if that's our concern. But
Like it's more worrying about the end result of I need this specific thing to have like connection with God rather than with whatever you have, try to have a connection with God, where you're
yeah,
at.
yeah,
That's really cool. Yeah, and I would like church to be more, connected with God. Like it, not just like this dryness.
mm,
And I don't know if that's just because I can be very heavily secular or I asked PBK this once because I felt like I was kind of like a non-Christian Christian or an atheist who likes the story but doesn't really believe, and trying to work my way back of like genuinely believing, even though it's hard to uh, I guess it's hard to believe in like spiritual things, or it's hard to believe that miracles exist or stuff like that. And I would like to do that more instead of just I don't know. I'm kind of lost here, but
yeah,
like
So,
I would like to be very real.
okay, so like the world's around you, God's there, right? And
Right.
so when something miraculous happens, okay, that's God. But when something very mundane happens, that's also God, right? Do you not
Mm.
believe that? Is this hard to believe? Is this hard to remember? Is this?
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I remember I was talking to some guys a while ago, is kind of saying the same thing. Like, why don't we see miracles and things like that? And this is just so happened. Like, so my dad had to get surgery on his eye, and he had to get like a cataract surgery or whatever.
Mm.
And this surgery is 90% unsuccessful. And if it's unsuccessful, it's not like a huge deal, but it means that like another specialist has to come and do another surgery to
Mm.
if it fails or whatever. So
Yeah.
only 1 out of 10 times is it successful, with no complications. Most of the time, so 90% of the time, it requires 2 surgeries. And he was like, I really want this to go well. And I was talking and called my mom and dad or whatever, and they said like, why don't you like pray? Pray for the surgery tomorrow or whatever. And I was like, okay. So I pray for it. I'll say, God, we just want to ask that this surgery is successful and it doesn't require a second surgery. And it was successful. So that's 1 out of 10. And we were like, oh, well, is that enough like of odds to say it's like miraculous or whatever? I don't know. But I specifically asked God. My dad asked God. That's what God did. So it's like that's an answered prayer. And it does have a unlikely odds. It's 1 out of 10. It's not 1 out of 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000, but still like 1 out of 10 is not odds you would ever bet on,
Yeah.
You wouldn't bet on 1 out of 10, but I prayed for it and God did it. So, like that's, I think some of the stuff of like the miracles that we expect and we want to see, like, I don't know. We just have to change our view. And it's interesting because I think it's really hard. Like, I think in our Western world, like God doesn't do as much stuff like that because, like, if you listen to stories of, like missionaries in other countries, they see miracles all the time because the people there like know of a spiritual reality and they believe in this stuff.
Yeah.
And so for them, like a miracle is like a more serious confirmation. I think we probably do hear about miracles a lot, and then we just read about how some scientific like thinker has explained it away as some sort of an outlier or whatever, like, or like a coincidence or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, what is, so like, how impossible does something have to be to count as being a miracle now? Like, I don't know.
Like our presumptions, our predispositions, I guess, are already discounting that before we even give it a chance.
Yeah.
And I wonder why that is too.
Well, there's stuff in the Bible that happens, right? So like Noah, or not Noah, Jonah, right?
Yeah.
Like God like makes a gourd come up and cover his head. He makes this giant tree come up, this giant leafy thing. It's in the middle of the sun, covers his head. He's so happy about it, right? And the next day, God kills the tree.
Right.
And I don't like to talk about this because some of this is like embarrassing stuff, but I have had miraculous things happen to me. Like, no, this is not a 1 in 10 chance. This is a miracle. And then God would send the worm, right? It's gone. I don't have any proof. But the stuff happens, and I don't know why it happens. That's the thing. There are signs and there are miraculous things that happen, but I don't like, even when they happen, I'm like, I don't know what they mean.
Yeah. No, that's
and so
good.
like, yeah. So I don't know if it helps that much. Like I remember things happening. I remember them happening like when I didn't believe in God, and it happened, and I remembered them, and then somehow I forgot, and I didn't believe in God. And for whatever reason, like particular things had to happen for me to finally be able to digest them. And I don't know why that is. But people are the way they are.
No, I think that's great. Like you said that you were once an atheist in the sense that you
for like
think
10 years.
Way, and then now you think that way. That's really hard because I feel like, that's what PVK really likes about Jordan Peterson. Not bringing him up, we don't have to talk about him or anything, but it seems really interesting is because it does feel like people go atheist and they don't come back, and I think it's really beautiful when you can you hear stories of people who were atheists and then can believe in something like real that's not seen.
So there's this whole thing, right, with Jesus, right? And Thomas, right, is like, dude, come on, you're not Jesus. That guy died. He got crucified. We saw it.
Yeah.
He's dead. And like, no, look at the holes in my hands. And he literally sees the holes in his hands. He has to poke his finger through the holes. And and he's like, yeah, it's cool that you finally believe now that you poke your fingers through my hands. But like, it would be even better. Trust me, your life would be way better if you believe without having to see. And I mean, I've seen some stuff, and I I understand. Like I actually like before it happened, I didn't get it. Like I'm like, man, it would be better. It would be better for me, like if I didn't need that, because like it's really confusing. So many like miraculous things happen, so many spiritual things happen, and it's just another layer of stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Just like the way that like mundane things, happened, right? Little children get killed, people get sick, earthquakes happen, churches fall down, right? And it's like, doesn't make any sense. There is a spiritual layer of reality, and I don't understand that either. I know it's real. I've seen it. I've seen the stuff. I don't understand it. And so like you still have to have faith that like God is sort of organizing it, right?
Yeah.
And the signs of that are subtler. And if you have faith and you look for them, I think you'll see them.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think maybe that's also really why it's important. That reminds me of James, where it says that you're not saved by works, but works are very important. In the sense that it doesn't make you saved or anything, but that's how you get closer to God, is like living like Jesus, embodying who he was. Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely try to rile my church to be more into that, because I feel like they're a lot like me, where they're just kind of tired and I guess sleepy spiritually. But a lot of them are very good Christians, so I hate to say such things, but for me, it feels like that's, I guess the zeal has kind of diminished, mostly just because of the actions that I've taken, right? And that's just something that I'm trying to change in my life, is to really to have a Christian practice, just so I can, I don't know, be blessed in that way, where like you embody it, and it's real, and you can participate in like God, and it's not just, you go to work, you look for a girlfriend, you complain to your boss, like not like this mundane life, even though you said that that's also part of that too, is like the mundanity. So,
well, I mean, it'd be good if you could love your boss. It'd be good if you could love your girlfriend. It'd be good if you could get married and have kids and love your kids and bless your community by raising your family well and having a ministry in your family, right? Where you gain wisdom from your wife and your wife gains wisdom from you. And like that is the good thing, right? That is the thing. It doesn't get better than that, man. That's a good thing to aim for.
Yeah.
It's let's see. There's a good quote from C.S. Lewis. He says, like, I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. So, like, that's the thing. It's like you say, like, you don't just see, like, how do you know the sun is in the sky? Because you can see it? No, because it's the only reason why you can see anything at all, like, and I think that's the thing, like, that when you kind of cross that line from like unbelief into belief, it doesn't just, it's not like, well, the world was totally a certain way, but now I put like God on top as like he's the reason why everything existed. No, it's like it changes, like everything in like every aspect of your life takes on a new characteristic where you're like, now, and that's why I'm thinking we kind of need to reconnect all this other stuff to our faith, because like the conservative people are right when they say like marriage and family and like a good work ethic and those things are good, like in and of themselves. they are good in and of themselves, but it's because it's like part of the good way that God created the world. So like even if you don't believe in God, like those things will, if you have those things, you will realize these are good things. Now the problem is that like we're not so good at like marketing those things to a lot of people. Like a lot of people aren't as interested in that stuff anymore. Which that's what I think is like that's a sad thing. But
Well, do you think it's not necessarily marketing, it's just living it? Because like I do have like I go to like bars and stuff too, and they often say stuff like the church is corrupt and blah blah blah. But
yeah,
once you get to like 2 a.m, they are very hungry for something real.
mm-hmm.
They're hungry for someone that lives it and someone that lives the life that we want. The girls don't like it. Girls want a guy that would really sacrifice for them and love them and take care of them, not just sleep with them. Guys really want a woman that will take care of them too, and it's not like this just game of like sleeping with each other. And I think if Christians who are very pious in a polite sense, like in a good way, not in a bad way, but we should make those people feel like it's an invitation. It's like something greater rather than like pre-substitute. Like you're not damned or you're going to hell for not doing this thing, but like how great this thing is, you can join in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do that. And I guess that's a lot of people feel like they can't believe in something like that because I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's like I mean, so I want to say like there is like some marketing aspects of it that could be done differently. Like say
Sure.
like like why should you wait until you're married or whatever to have sex, or like okay, think about it this way: if you do that, like maybe some people would say like, oh, I'm married to this woman, there's other women that are like more beautiful out there or whatever. But
Yeah.
if you are married to someone and that's the only person that you're having sex with, that's the most exclusive sex in the world. Like, because there's a lot of like really hot ladies that a lot of guys have had the opportunity of being with, and so it's like, yeah, sure, it's like that's how special is that if 10, 20, 50 other guys have already been there and done
Right.
that. So it's like like you can't really overstate that. It's I mean, at the end of the day, so I mean, like that's one way of looking at it and stuff. I mean, I think another thing that like, and this is something that I'm really disappointed in, is that I always knew like parenting is like is a big responsibility and that it is like a good thing.
Yeah.
But like I don't think most men know how like fulfilling it really is to be a father. Like we're just not pitched that way. It's just not talked about that way. But it's like a profound honor. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
It's still, I think, the best retirement plan. Like honestly, like if you have kids and your kids still love you by the time you're old because you don't like horribly mistreat them, then they will take care of you. Like it was kind of the retirement plan for all of history up until whoever invented the 401k, or the pension. But
That's a good point. And you're right about sex too, because it's not that. I mean, I agree 100%, but I think also it's that you are making a covenant with like a woman. That's something you do with someone you're very close with, and to just like have that connection and then just tear it away really affects women. I mean, men too. It affects me, but women very negatively. Because a lot of it is like you are like sharing something very deep, and there's more to it than just like mental or like a physical massage. Like it's like a real connection, and to just like do that, take it away, do that with all these women, and then yeah, I think that's a terrible recipe for disaster. You know, like that's bad. And yeah, I think so. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Um. Let's see. Oh, it's like it's another thing too. Is like I think people say like, oh, like you should live with somebody before you get married or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, whenever people are like living together, when they don't have that commitment, there's always like an insecurity about like, and it's always like the person who's like less interested has the more power, because you have to keep that person interested. If you're not, they can leave, they can go at any time. Like, so I mean, not that like with like no fault divorce and stuff, it's like the commitment of marriage does not really mean what it used to. But if you believe in that commitment and the person that you're married to also believes in it, that's like the foundation. Because then it's like, if you have a fight or whatever, like if you had a serious fight and you're married, you're still married. If you get in a serious fight with somebody who you just like live with, or you're just sleeping with, that might be the end of it. Like
Yeah.
you don't have that like stability there. And I mean, so yeah, I mean, there's kind of like institutions and stuff are really important, but also because like the relational aspect is so important in the Bible too. Like one thing is that like by becoming a father, I've learned like, oh, this is what it means when God looks at us and he says like he's our father. And like I was listening to this lady, she was talking about like a lot of the damage that's come from like divorce and like some of the problems with like just all the crazy new inventions that have been changing the what is a family and stuff like that. And she was actually saying that like the word parenting isn't really even a useful word, because mothering and fathering are totally different like things, and
Yeah.
they're not really interchangeable. And so like, I mean, I would not like I could not like be a mother the way my wife can be. But and being a father is like a totally different thing. And like, some of it is kind of like that fathers do like let the kids fall and scrape their knees a little bit, and they don't just like rush in,
Yeah.
because you want them to figure out that they're going to be okay even when stuff happens. And then you realize like, oh, this is like a little bit of how God looks at us. This is why some of this stuff happens. I'm getting a phone call. I'll be back in a minute. I'm gonna go. You guys can chat.
Cool. Okay.
All right.
I probably won't stay too long, but I thought that was really cool, your testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad it was helpful. I know so much of this is like really private, but I'm glad I was able to tell you enough to help.
Sure.
So
I don't
what-
want to pry anyway, by any means.
Yeah. So what's going on? You're going to church right now?
Yeah.
Like a church
So,
with people?
yeah. So I would say that I grew up in the church. If you'd like to hear my testimony,
Go ahead.
I grew up in the church, kind of drifted away when I was in late college age, like 23, 24. And I moved to Austin, had a negative experience with, like, I guess, the world, I don't know.
Mhm.
And so I got invited to a church and had a really life-changing experience. And Christ was like more of a thing that embodied, like, I'd pray to myself all the time. I was discipled, and it was a beautiful thing. But it really was during 2020. I also kind of, admittedly, was too right wing, too like overtly reactionary, too conservative, of like being very bitter about society. And so I left. I mean, I lived in a big city. It kind of comes with the territory, but I left Austin during 2020, and I guess when I came back home to a very conservative, safe place, my faith actually dwindled a lot. Um, I think a little bit because I think I should have stayed if there were like these. I'm reminded of like in the news, I guess LA had like a blackout or something, and a lot of people want to leave these places because they're like unstable. But I feel like Christians should go to those unstable places and make them stable. And for me, I felt like that was it. I was running away from a problem, and then I also didn't really change. Like I would watch a lot of, I mean, a little graphic, but I like watch pornography, not change as a person. And then I just listened to a lot of criticisms of the Bible from like Tobias Singer or just atheists in general. And I guess when my faith was very weak, I I didn't I didn't really I couldn't really stand up to like criticisms of the Bible. So I just kind of had my own private meaning crisis where I just felt like everything I believed in was helpful but wrong. And then I'm trying to come back to Christ and come back to this and come get myself out of this meaning crisis and be a good guy and a Christian and believer and really live it rather than just kind of say I agree to these like bullet points and then just that's it. If does that make any sense?
It does make sense. I mean, to me, the most likely thing to help is actually just to ask God to take you on the right way. Um, uh, I don't know what your prayer life is like, but that seems like the thing to do.
Yeah. Like, how does y'all's prayers life? Do y'all wake up in the morning and pray, and then like pray at night and stuff?
I've been saying the Lord's Prayer a lot. I kind of got turned off of like a couple other kinds of prayers I was doing. I was doing like the Jesus prayer for a long time, and that I had a thing happen, and I was like I wasn't interested anymore. And for a while, I used to meditate a lot, and after a while, it was like I couldn't do it anymore. And so like you feel like you sort of get like almost like more encroached on, like like sometimes it feels like, oh yeah, here's an open pathway over here, go that way. And sometimes it feels like almost like I'm like some grain that's getting crushed by like a pillar, of just being ground down, and I just have to go somewhere else. And right now, that's what I've been doing a lot. It's the Lord's Prayer. Sometimes I write down things that I want to have happen. The last big thing that happened for me, I was actually Jacob sent me a link to, or no, Jacob was talking. I was talking about repentance, and I was talking to Jacob on his Discord, and he recommended me I look at the Mishnah Torah on something called Teshuvah, which is just repentance in Hebrew. And I found a rabbi who was going over it about repentance, and I can't even tell you what happened. People when you try to communicate, there are things you communicate without words, right? And something was communicated to me, and I was able to repent in a certain way. And the big sin for me that I was dealing with was this hatred towards an old boss of mine. I think I'm over it. Like 2 years, I've been hating this person every day. It's been freaking people out. Like you could people who know me, right, would like feel it across the room how much I hated this person, right? And I think I finally am over that, and it makes, I have other issues, but those are now way easier to handle because I'm not dealing with that anymore, right? And yeah. But that's right.
That's awesome.
Every time I hear Jacob say Christianity is obviously wrong, I pray for him now. That's what I do. So that's how I bolster my prayer life.
Well, every time I think about it, he reveals he finds like more bugs under the rock, and like I do think that the way people talk and think about Christianity is, especially among Protestants, is badly developed, and I think there's wisdom there, but like most people don't have it, and I'm glad he's there to like make me think harder about it.
Oh yeah, I mean I agree. Like because I've definitely because yeah, I mean I think there are plenty of good answers to most of the objections he brought up, but once you deal with it on a personal level and think through it yourself, you're better off. But I mean I kind of think in the sense of like that quote that he talks about from Maimonides about how like Christianity and Islam are just spreading the word of the Messiah to everyone, and like I'm like, well, yeah, I think that's fine. I think that it is still going to be Jesus who's the Messiah that shows up at the end of the day. But like I don't mind if but I think like Jesus has been so poorly represented by Christians over the millennia here that I can't fault Jewish people for not like seeing what seems obvious to us when we read the Hebrew Bible, like because honestly, like it is like on every page that to me, and it's not just because like I've been trained to see it this way, like because I see like things that I've never heard in some other thing, like it just seems like that that's true, but if if like the true intention of their heart is to not be deceived and to not believe in something that they think could be a false Messiah, and so they're therefore wanting to kind of put they they're putting a higher like level of requirement on that belief, then I think that it is a faith pointed in the same direction. Like it's just like we're kind of maybe looking at this thing and being like, yeah, that's the right thing, like we got the gist of it, and so we believe in it, and they want like all of the certainty possible to like know for sure, like it's just kind of like it's a difference in the resolution of certainty, so but
well, do you mind if I say something?
yes, sure.
So I think a lot, I mean, I've never read the Talmud or a lot of the texts, but it seems like a lot of it is a reaction to Christianity and Islam of like negative experiences. And so even though like when I watched a little bit of Rabbi Tobias Singer, and he's like a very big counter missionary. I would argue a little bit of an evangelist, but they're not supposed to evangelize. But when he did like a lecture a long time ago, and he said like the whole reason why he basically does what he does is because of the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to Jacob too, a lot of that stuff is like on the back of their minds all the time. And I think with Islam too, well, not exactly with Islam, but you can kind of build antibodies with what they're saying if you kind of come to the mind of like, there's a lot of pain there. And then you can just kind of like be quick to listen to what Jacob says, but like, and slow to speak with what you say, but still be like, what does it say in the Bible? To be wise like a serpent, but like loving like a lamb. Where it's just like, I get where you're coming from, but I'm still going to hold on to God or Jesus, and Jesus. And with Islam too, they're very scary in the sense of like how they talk, like you're wrong and this is why, blah blah blah. But like if you kind of get in a little bit of what they're saying, they attack the Trinity a lot, but I think they give up really Jesus's resurrection and sacrifice for the world away. And I think as a Christian, you can have a lot of confidence in that, because to me, that's like the way of the world or the way the world should be, is like sacrificial love, and that you're blessed, and Jesus rose from the grave, and that's what makes him like the Son of God. But also that's the way to go, and why would you give that up? And yeah. So I wouldn't be too worried about what Jacob says. Just kind of like, oh, cool,
No. I mean, no. I think. Well, I mean, honestly, that's like that. That is the thing. Like, we do need like a world where everybody just agrees with everything. Is like, that's terrible,
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, I think that yeah, I mean, the history between on both sides, like Judaism and Christianity, is just very
Right.
it's so intertwined, and there's so much because it's like, I'm not say undoubtedly there's been many godly Jewish scholars and rabbis throughout the centuries who genuinely love God and desire to understand his will. But at the same time, if they saw Christians as the people who persecute them and treat them poorly and all this stuff, then they're not gonna listen to what they have to say or represent them well. And that goes the same way too, because Christians have definitely been very bad in their treatment of the Jewish people and the Jewish faith. And so it's really messy. Part of that's why I'm not real big in wanting to be super institutional in Christianity, because I think everyone is born a sinner, and we all have a tendency towards selfishness and greed and wickedness, really. And if I get to be a Christian because I was born a Christian, into a society that views things that way, well, that's really problematic, because I just was wrecked when I listened to Jordan Peterson talk to that guy who is a indigenous artist up in Canada, like an Indian guy, and he grew up in this Catholic boarding school, and all the kids were just sexually abused by priests and nuns and stuff, and he basically said I don't want anything to do with their Bible. And it's wow, the devil, that was a great plan the devil had there. Just to that's his favorite thing, for people who claim to represent Christ to do horrific things, to totally turn people off from wanting anything to do with it. And I mean, he's not going to read the Old Testament either. He's not going to read the Hebrew scriptures either, because of that experience, So, and so that's why I don't want to be this kind of stuff always to a certain extent has to happen in the heart of an individual. It can have an effect on a society. I think that if you get enough godly people in a country, and enough people that want, because they genuinely love God and they're wanting to keep these commandments, it's going to have an effect where the people who are less interested on a personal level are still going to kind of go with the flow, and the country as a whole can become more moral and in a better place overall.
Yeah.
But it still has to happen in the hearts of individual people. If it doesn't happen there, it's not real. It's not really going to happen, So
yeah, I mean, I think sometimes Christians can be a little too hard on themselves. I mean, when you hear a story such as that, it's almost impossible to be Christians have done a lot of terrible things, or people who claim to be Christians have done. But there's also a lot of Christians who are just I feel like when I listen to not Christians and non-Christians like go in dialogue, Christians oftentimes are like 100% like, what can I do to like heal the situation? How can I love you? How can I, like, I'll do anything to make you feel like that we don't hate you, we love you, And I think just to have a quiet confidence in God is very key. And, like you don't have to feel bad about Christian institutions, but, at the same time, know that we have scarred people, but, I don't know. I guess I think that it would be nice if a Christian pastor could teach people how to have strength in being a Christian or being in Christ, while also not being cruel to people or not being overly zealous or pious. Like, I think there's like a middle ground of like, does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe one role that is really important for Christians is just to kind of like like the role of forgiveness. And one way I kind of think about it is that it's like absorbing the cost or the pain of somebody else's wrongdoing and not demanding any satisfaction for it.
Yeah.
Because like you kind of hear these stories about like how somebody be like, oh, somebody had something annoying happen in their personal life, and then they take it out like on the person like making their coffee, and then that person starts having a bad day because a customer treated them bad, and so then they're like mean to their boss or something, or they're like, and this thing of like, one person gets pissed off and treats somebody rudely, and that kind of will cause a chain reaction of like everybody they're people pass that along,
Mm-hmm.
like when somebody treats you badly, you get annoyed and you snap at somebody else, or like especially like in work it's depending on how many like layers of your company is, like if your boss directly above you calls you and is saying like, we need to get this done, blah 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 blah, it's probably because his boss called him, and probably because his boss called him, and that's just how it goes, like stuff like that. And I think the thing that the Christian can do, they're being conscious of it, is just to like say, when you get that thing, to just stop it there and just say like, oh, they must have had something bad happen to them. I'm not going to pass that on. I'm going to try to forgive. And you're just forgiving whatever this one little thing that happened to you. You're forgiving like that one angry phone call. But what that does is it like stops that chain of passing that sin on, And I think that's like, if that could have a profound effect if we just put something like that into practice, thinking about it that way.
How would you start doing that? Like, is it just like how you said, it's just not paying the negativity forward, but kindness forward?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that's kind of like this thing of like, it's focusing on like Christ, who did not deserve any of the things that happened to him, did it voluntarily because he loves us. So we embody that, and then you can see that like in the Acts of the Apostles and stuff, where they're rejoicing because they were worthy of being persecuted, or like Paul and Silas are in jail and they're singing worship songs, like because they're like, they see it as like it's working, like here's the evidence that what we're doing is working, because they put us in jail, like and so I just think like any of that stuff, like I remember I was like super annoyed. It was interesting because it was on Good Friday this last spring. Like I had to work at the most annoying guy's house. He was just so picky, and I had this guy who was with me, who I was training him. He was terrible. He didn't end up staying with our company. Um, and it like was like such a frustrating day. Like usually I'm supposed to get done like at 3:00. I was there till 7:00. I was like an hour away from home, and I was like, this is the suckiest day. And then I just kept thinking like, oh wait, this is Good Friday. Like, what did Jesus go like? If Jesus went through that, I can deal with this. And so like it really, like I wanted to just kind of like stew in it and just like be like, oh, this is like, I'm so pissed off at this guy. This guy's being a dick. He's being annoying. This other guy's no help. He's making my life harder. Like I could just do this myself. I'd probably get it done faster rather than having this other guy help me. Like, and I just like but then I was just like, no, I'm not just gonna let it go. Like I'm just gonna endure this. Like, because what can I say? Like it's nothing compared to what Christ went through for me, and like I don't know if it's like that necessarily had a positive impact, but like. I don't know. It could have been worse if I decided to like lash out at that guy or, shout at my coworker or anything like that. It's like, and that wouldn't have been better for me. If I had done something like that, it wouldn't have improved my spiritual life or my actual life in any way, So it's just, you just kind of, that's what like forgiveness is. You just stop passing on your pain to somebody else. You let it stop with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you said that, it made me think of so like people are like, oh, this is like an inversion, right? Where we drink the blood even though you're not supposed to drink the blood, right? And it's like, okay, well, what's going on there? What's going on with Jesus? What is he an inversion of something? Is something going on? And there seems to be some sort of thing going on with Jesus in like the Passover lamb, right? Somehow his blood covers our house and death passes over, right? But it's interesting because like Jesus dying on the cross seems like an inversion of this Jewish story about like, this is a dumb story. It doesn't make any sense. But the story is like there's like a party, and like there's a guy who's like a Roman, or someone doesn't like, comes to the party, and he's like, the guy who's running the party says leave, right? He's like, dude, I'll pay for my food, and then the guy is like, no, leave. I want you gone. I don't like you. And he's like, dude, I'll pay for all the food in the whole party. I'll pay for the whole party. He's like, no, leave. Get the hell out of my house, right? And so he does, but when he leaves, he's so embarrassed and he feels so bad that he goes and he tells the Romans, and this is what leads to the exile, right? And I wonder if that's the inversion. I don't know for sure. That's something I gotta ask Jacob about. That's
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, back that a little bit. What would be how would the inversion work?
How would the inversion work? Okay, so this guy is angry, right? For no reason, really, right? He's just like a guy eating at his party, right? He's just a guest in his house who he's supposed to be good to, right? Versus like what's going on in Israel, right? Where these are people living in their land. Someone took over their house, right? They took over their whole land, right? And then despite them taking over, right? Jesus isn't forming rebellion, right? He's not. Right, he's not someone like Prokopka or one of these rebellious types. He's just living his life, preaching the word, and even though he could rebuke them, even though angels could come down and defend him, right? He doesn't. He willingly is silent and dies on the cross. And even like when I think about this, I think about like what actually had to happen for Israel to come back, and it seems like clearly what happened was the Holocaust, right? And even like when you start looking at these parallels, you see like, oh wait, so like, oh, who's the most evil person who pops into your mind? Like, who would be the guy? And if you're anyone like me, the guy is Hitler, right? For almost everybody. And okay, well, who was the guy before Hitler? I don't know if you know this, but before there was Hitler, and you need to come with an evil guy. The evil guy was Pharaoh, right? The Pharaoh that enslaved the Egyptians or enslaved the Hebrews. And I don't know, man. It seems like all connected, but I don't know exactly how to. You connect all these things, and then you're not exactly sure how to cut it up and make sense of it. But I feel like it's there. If I knew a little bit more, if I was just a little more perceptive, I could cut it neatly up and explain it all. But it's a little half baked right now. Sorry.
You're good.
I did think like, I know Jacob's not totally against seeing any symbolic things happening in the current state of Israel and its existence. But I mean, I did sort of think in a way, like the Holocaust was like a death of Israel, of the Hebrew people in a way. And then like 3 years later, 3 years after World War II, that's Israel is resurrected as a nation. Like it's kind of a
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
Whoa, that's cool. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go as far to say like, oh yeah, Israel is a holy state, Israel is the Messiah, or any stuff like this. But that's goofy. But it certainly means something. It has to.
Yeah.
Has to.
Well,
sorry,
I need to go to bed, but so I don't know if there's anybody.
Yeah.
I'll wait a couple minutes. If
go
anybody
away.
is because neither of you guys have like the like login stuff or whatever to end the podcast, right? I'll wait a couple minutes. If anybody who can host this thing wants to come on and take my place, I will wait a couple minutes, but if not, I will be done. So
that's okay. Yeah, I mean it's 10 o'clock where I'm at.
Yeah, you're in Texas too, right?
Yes, sir.
What city are you in?
Midland.
Oh, okay. Let's see. How
That's
far away is that from me?
Are you in?
San Antonio.
That's like 6 hours away.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty far.
Yeah.
Because is that like up near Dallas, sort of? Or
No, Dallas. It's like I'd like to think of Midland as like the midpoint between El Paso and the rest of Texas.
Oh, okay. So west.
Yeah, West Texas.
Yeah.
The desert.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, Texas is like the one state where it's like we could have a meetup and it's still like it's still going to be a long drive for somebody for no matter what. But
yeah, it'd have to be like an event meetup. It couldn't be just like a regular thing because
yeah,
its own small country.
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, thanks for letting me join. I had a really good time talking about it.
Yeah, glad I got to talk to you guys. It was a good time. So
it was nice talking to you.
Yeah. All right. Good evening,
Right.
all. But